Welcome to the annual general meeting of the BAA. This is being held on Zoom with a live stream to YouTube. The meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available on our YouTube channel within an hour or so of the meeting's end. It is now my pleasure to hand over to Alan Lorraine, the President of the BAA.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Do you want to, so people can see me, do you want to start the video?
Yes, I can. If you give me a moment, I can start your video. Actually, I have to ask to start your video, so I think you'll need to click on that. There you go.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome everybody to the 130th AGM of the British Astronomical Association. Obviously, this year is slightly different, and so we are doing this by webinar. Rather than being either in Burlington House as we were last year or the Institute of Physics, which is where we were intending to be this year. In the first instance, the minutes of the last AGM will normally be posted on the door of Burlington House, and people would be asked to simply vote for by raising their hands if we were able to pass them as a true record of the last AGM. Obviously, that's not realistically possible. Whilst we could have a voting system within Zoom on the webinar, that wouldn't be the case. So what we've agreed to do is, if you have looked at the minutes on the website, which has been displayed there for about a month now, if there are any comments that you would like to raise, if you would like to use the question and answers portion at the base of your screen or the chat function, then what we will do is we will go over to the Treasurer Jeff King's slot on the accounts, and then we will return back, and if there have been no comments, then we will assume that the minutes have been approved and we will pass those in the absence of a formal vote. So that's the plan for this evening. We've also then got the review from my review of the year as president. In normal circumstances, we would have a president's presentation, but in view of the fact we're on a webinar and trying not to make it too long with me talking all the time, we're not having that this year, and then we will have the ballot results for both board and council, and then move on to the Sky Notes with Nick James. So if I can pass back to Andy to control it, but Jeff, for your presentation on the accounts, if I may.
Okay, I don't seem to be showing up on my screen. Can everyone hear me?
You will be visible to everyone, so don't worry about that.
Okay, right. Right, I'm going to share my screen. Here it is. Okay. Hello. There we go. Right, as Alan has just said, I'm going to give you the overview of the financial results for the period 2019 to 20. If there are any questions, please put them in the Q&A at the bottom and we'll answer them at the end. Anyway, the full financial results have been made available at least a month ago on the BAA website, and these results have been subjected, and I do mean subjected, to an independent review by accountancy firm RSM. So the numbers are the numbers. You are not allowed to argue with the numbers because RSM has done the full auditing job on them. The important extracts for these were published in the October JBAA, and so whether you've been to the website or just looked in the journal, you should have had access to most of these numbers. Now, something happened this year, which is different from most years. We changed the end of the reporting period for finance from June 30th to March 31st, which means that this period I'm going to talk about only covers 9 months. However, that new end date almost exactly coincided with the very bottom of the temporary crash on the markets, which meant our investments showed a very large temporary loss. but even so, we retained a very healthy level of reserves, and a strong recovery has followed. So here are an extract from the numbers, and these are two columns. The left-hand column is the 9 months I'm talking about. The right-hand column is the previous 12 months. And for the sake of this, on the income, because the market numbers were so erratic, I have chosen to give you the income numbers without income from investments. We'll talk about that bit in a minute. So you can see that our income, 118,000, but our expenditure over those 9 months, 169,000, meaning that we had a loss of 51,446 on day-to-day work. Now, if I take out the bequests and investments, bequests, investments and donations, we actually had a loss on total operations of £56,845 for those 9 months. So something like £6,500 a month. Now here's the nasty line. Our investments, which last year, as you can see, increased by 80,621. This year went down by £83,002, which meant the net movement of our funds is a minus £134,500, meaning that at the end of the year, the end of the period, the 9 month period, we carried forward total reserves of £1.4 million instead of the 1.5 million we started the 9 months with. So that's the basic overview of the numbers. So our total deficit, 134,000, investment loss 83,000, deficit without those investments would have been 51,000. Our reserves carried forward as a 1.4 million. And the tangible assets, that's the desks, the computers, the instruments, that's 27,500. And our monetary assets, most of which is in investments, the 1.38 million. So that's the position as it stood at the end of March. Now that large temporary loss were experienced in our investments, as you can see. The operational losses continue, but at a very similar monthly level as last year. So we do have a structural issue that we are addressing, but we still enjoy a very healthy level of reserves. All the details, as I said, are on the website or in the important extracts in the JVAA. And that's about all I want to say on the numbers, and I'm quite willing to answer questions as they come through. So, Andy, do you see any questions or?
We have a question from Gerard Gilligan, the chairman of the SHA. You've said that the investments recovered after the crash. Can you tell us what the current level of reserves is?
Okay, yes, I can. The current level of reserves as of this morning is, if I can find the right piece of paper, £1.613 million. In other words, our reserves have gone up by just over £205,000 since the end of March. Now, that's a bit misleading in that most of that recovery was recovering from that huge crash the markets made, and we just bounced back up again. So what I would probably prefer to tell you is that if we were comparing today with this same date last year, i.e. before the pandemic, before the crash, today we are now looking to be £65,000 better off than we were last year. So in summary then, we've got a total reserves of 1.6 million and 1.35 million of that is invested in the market. Okay, thank you. I'll stop sharing now. There we go.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, very much for that comprehensive review of where we are at the present time. What I would like to do, Andy, can I just check with you as to whether there have been any comments with regards to the minutes from last year?
There have been no questions or comments on the minutes from last year.
Excellent stuff. So on that basis, what I would like to do is to confirm that we will accept the minutes as prepared and as displayed on the website. So thank you very much indeed for that.
And Jeff, I'm just going to turn off your camera and mute.
Oh yeah, fine, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Good evening again, everybody. When I returned to astronomy in about 2004, I attended some evening classes given by Guy Hurst, who many of you will know, who had just completed his term as the BAA president. And since that time, he's become a firm friend, and on several occasions, he's commented to me that each president seems to have some issue that needs to be contended with during their presidency. Little did I know that the last AGM, what a year we would have, and that I would be presenting my review from my kitchen by webinar. So that's the position at the moment. What I would like to do is initially was to ask you to pause for a moment. 2020 has been a very difficult year. Some people have been largely unaffected, whilst others who have had to self-isolate have experienced loneliness and depression, and others have experienced significant financial hardship. There has, however, been a very significant number across the countries that have lost their lives. Wait a second, I can't, the screen not.
Hi, Alan. If you're having a problem, you might want to try switching, because it may be you're seeing the Zoom screen rather than the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you for that. Going to slide. Okay, thank you for that, Andy. So hopefully, does that work going backwards and forwards? Okay. Sorry for the technical issues. The association has experienced its own share of deaths. I'm sorry to be morbid in this, but in the latest journal, I noted that at the end of August, the office had received calls or emails notifying us of the deaths of 30 members, compared to the preceding year, which according to the office was around average of 17, which is obviously a 76% increase. This rose early in September by a further 5. And even now that the office is receiving messages from abroad where people have passed away in the summer. Whilst we have no idea how many of these, or indeed if any, were COVID related, it is clearly the case that we have lost an unusually high number of our friends, and I would like you to spare a moment to remember them. Within these numbers, we have lost two very well-known members of the wider astronomical community, Heather COUPER and very recently Ian Nicholson. Heather COUPER was one of the UK's most prolific astronomy broadcasters and writers, who inspired many to take up stargazing. Born in June 1949, Heather came to prominence in the 1980s, writing and presenting 2 landmark Channel 4 television series, The Planets and the Stars, which were made with her longtime friend and collaborator, Nigel Hembest. She graduated from the University of Leicester with a BSc in astronomy and physics, although by her own admission she was not a model student. However, it was her passion for astronomy, having witnessed a green meteor as a child, that spurred her on. After leaving research halfway through her PhD studies at the University of Oxford, she joined the planetarium at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich as senior lecturer, where she remained until 1983, when she departed to pursue her media career. Heather broke down boundaries for women in astronomy. The year after leaving Greenwich, she became elected president of the BAA, the first woman and the second youngest person at the age of 35 to hold the position. That was between 1984 and 1986. In 1993, she became Professor of Astronomy at Gresham College in London, again, the first female professor at Gresham in its 400-year history. She gave public talks on astronomy for 3 years. And of course, as one of the public faces of astronomy on television, she inspired many girls as well as boys to take an interest in astronomy. She was also prolific in her writing alongside Nigel Hembest, with dozens of titles spanning 40 years. Outside astronomy, in 1994, Heather was elected to serve on the Millennium Commission, which distributed money raised by the National Lottery to good causes. She remained on the commission until it closed in 2009, and for her work with the commission and also her work on a lifetime mission to promote astronomy, in 2007 she was awarded the CBE by the Queen. There was also an asteroid named after her, asteroid 3922 Heather. She died in her sleep at Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Buckinghamshire on the 19th of February following a short illness, missed by us all. It was with great sadness that on the 3rd of September we learned of the sad death of Ian Nicholson. A full obituary will appear in the journal in due course, but suffices to say that Ian will be sorely missed within the astronomical community. A founding member of astronomy now and a regular host at the Astrofest exhibition for almost 20 years. In 2015, he was awarded an Astronomy Now Lifetime Achievers Award. In addition to both Heather and Ian, we have lost David Gavine, former Aurora editor, Aurora director. David Gavine was born in Dundee, Scotland in May 1937. With the death of his father when he was only a year old, he was brought up in a large family of aunts and grandparents during the austere war years. His childhood was blighted by periods of severe illness, which meant that he was largely self-taught, but science caught his imagination early, and particularly astronomy, which was developed during his visits to the Dundee Mills Observatory, where he attended evening classes. In 1956, Dave helped set up the Dundee Astronomical Society with an old school friend, Harry Ford, who shared an interest in astronomy. The small society, which eventually went on to meet in the Mills Observatory, celebrated its 60th anniversary in 2016, and the BAA spent one of its out of London weekend meetings up there. Dave graduated with a BSc in geology at St Andrews in 1960, but careers in earth sciences were few and far between then, so he took a teacher's training course and started a career teaching science in a Dundee junior school. Various posts followed, and he obtained an MA in geography in 1969 at Aberdeen University. Astronomy remained a very strong part of his life, and he joined the Astronomical Society of Edinburgh and served as president for 3 years, and introduced a journal for them and edited it for 20 years. And he was awarded their Lorimer Medal for a lifetime promoting astronomy, invited to become the president of the Dundee Astronomical Society in 1979. Dave was a member of numerous societies, including the Society for the History of Astronomy, the Royal Meteorological Society, the British Sundial Society, the Geographical Society, and he was elected to be a fellow of the RAS in 1963. His BA career started in 1955, and whilst being primarily an observer of aurora and noctilucent cloud, which he continued for many, many years up until his death, he also contributed from time to time to the Meteor, Lunar, Variable Star and historical sections. He was assistant director to Ron Liversley and Ken Kennedy of the Aurora section for 30 years and director from 2005 to 10. He awarded the Lydia Brown Medal in 2003, and in 2012, asteroid 7120 was named David Gavine by its discoverer Robert Naught, who knew Dave from his time at the Dundee Observatory, and in recognition of Dave's contribution to astronomy. Dave died on the 2nd of January, beginning of this year. I'm very pleased to announce that he left a bequest in his will of a sum of £2,000 to the association. So thank you very much indeed for that. The board and council. I would like to thank all members of the board and council for their hard work during the year. Richard McKim will be standing down from the Board of Trustees, having completed 3 years, and I'm very grateful to his contributions and also for his advice on matters relating to the association. If you're unsure about anything about the association, ask Richard. Business Secretary will be announcing the results of the ballot later this evening. I would like to congratulate the successful applicants for the new session of Council. And I would also like to express my thanks to everyone who gives up their time to serve the Association. We're always looking for new blood, as it were, and to bring new ideas and expertise to the Council. And I would encourage people to consider putting their names forward for next year. In normal circumstances, I would have shown the formal Council picture, but clearly one was not taken because we were all social distancing. And I think if we went back to the beginning of the year, then if 100 people in the street were asked to name a communication program, then Zoom might have been a pointless answer. But clearly now everyone is very well aware of the ability to use Zoom, and all the council and board meetings have been held online. There have been some advantages, though, as can be seen in that particular picture. Lynn Smith, who unfortunately doesn't get down from Scotland too many times, and Sandra Brantingham as well, that they have been able to attend, and so our attendance rate and contribution from all members of the council have been increased. Office. Following lockdown, Burlington House was closed and there was a need to relocate to the office. My thanks to Maddie, Julia and Jane for their efforts, particularly since March when they have all been working from home. This initially presented some problems with posts being redirected from Burlington House, but I'm pleased that these have been overcome. And I also need to make a special mention of the work that Andy Wilson has done in conjunction with the office, sourcing and configuring new laptops, arranging delivery, training and ongoing support. This has meant that whilst the online shop has been suspended, all other aspects of the office work are achievable. Journal. The journal remains the flagship publication of the association that's received either in paper form or digitally by all members. And I would like to commend the editor, Philip Jennings, who's settled it exceptionally well and is working hard to bring new material into publication. The current issue is particularly striking, that's in the bottom right-hand corner, with its special cover designed by space artist David Hardy. Inside, Dr. Paul Abel's article on the life in the Venusian clouds and Robin Ledbetter's work on the spectroscopy of comet neowise are hot off the press. Thanks to all of you who contribute to the journal, writing articles and material, and also to Jeremy Shears as paper secretary. As with all aspects of the BAA, there is a team ethos, and credit should also go to Nick Hewitt for the Sky Notes and also to John Shooter, who load the files onto the website for members to get their digital copies. There's also the newsletter, which is very important and is published each month. The newsletter keeps members updated with current events in the association, distributed by email. So it's a note really for everybody. If we don't have your email address, then you're missing out. And I'd particularly like to, my thanks go to Janice McLean for all her hard work in preparing and distributing the newsletter each month. Again, the handbook, whilst the information is available on the internet, the handbook retains a place in the hearts of many BAA members. And Steve Harvey does an excellent job in coordinating and collating all the information that goes into that handbook. Meetings, been very challenging this year. And may I say a big thank you to Hazel Collett, our meeting secretary. Hazel, you have escaped this year without a picture. In the past, I've been looking at past years and people have found pictures of you. I wasn't so fortunate, so you've got away with that one. But Hazel has worked tirelessly to arrange our meetings this year. Unfortunately, due to circumstances that everyone will appreciate, not all of them are able to proceed. And perhaps it's a sad case that as astronomers, we often have the case that we arrange outreach events and then have to cancel them at short notice due to the weather, but this has been somewhat more significant. So let's start with the meetings that did go ahead. The first one that I attended as president, it was last November, was the Equipments and Techniques section inaugural meeting run by David Arditi, and was held at the Bedford School, arranged in conjunction with Bedford Astronomical Society, very well attended, and no doubt the first of many for the relatively new section. And by the way, the meal was excellent. So if you get a chance to go up to Bedford School, then you can get a good refreshments. Moving on, the Christmas meeting, we again returned to the Institute of Physics as for last Christmas, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank them for their continued support in allowing us to hold meetings there, although obviously due to the restrictions it is presently closed and not available. At the Christmas meeting, members listened to talks from Dr. Mark Kidger from the European Space Agency, that was talked on Plato. That's the search for Earth 2-like planets by ESA to find Earth-sized planets in the habitable zone of Sun-like stars. I was pleased that whilst the BAA brought him over, that Mark, whilst he was over in the UK, also undertook a series of talks to local astronomical societies, meaning that his BAA Christmas lecture was talk number 3 of 4 in as many days. That was a bit of a marathon as far as he was concerned. We were also pleased to welcome Professor Emma Bunce of Leicester University, who was at the time President-elect of the RAS. She's now President. And her talk tied in well with Mark's being Oceans, Ices and Fires, the Mysteries and Moons of Jupiter. Sky Notes were presented, as they are this evening, by Nick James. The meeting was broadcast live on YouTube, enabling that those members who had not been fortunate enough to obtain tickets to watch these excellent speakers were able to see them. January 2020. New Year started benignly enough with our January meeting again being held at the IOP. We were treated to 2 interesting talks, the first from BAA in Liverpool AS member Fred Knight, explaining his observations on the tracking of latitude movements of solar prominences. And then Dr. Julian Onions from the University of Nottingham talked about the use of ever bigger computers to create sophisticated simulations in a universe from scratch. For the Sky Notes, we were very pleased to welcome, particularly Mary McIntyre. Incredibly, this was, so I understand, the first time that Sky Notes had been given by a female presenter. And she received very positive feedback from those that were able to attend at the hall, and also those who watched on YouTube. I was very pleased for Mary. It was a bright start to 2020 when we were focusing on the achievements of women in astronomy. Next one, I attended Back to Basics in workshop in Cottingham near Hull. I have to admit, this was the first Back to Basics I have attended, actually, organised by Hazel in conjunction with the local astronomical society. Well attended, a great opportunity for people seeing what the BAA has to offer, and a chance for BAA members to talk to people perhaps newer to astronomy. Thanks go to the presenters, Stuart Moore, Philip Jennings, who stood in for Bill Leatherbow, Mike Fultz, Sandra Branting and Tony Morris, who presented but also ran the sales stand, so thank you for that. Then, whilst it seems easy looking back, the decision to cancel meetings appeared very hard at the time. I remember talking in early March to Callum for his Deep Sky section annual meeting, and it was sort of touch and go, do we go ahead, do we not? And we didn't want to be seen to be overreacting. But that was postponed. The special general meeting and BAA meeting had to be cancelled. The one-day spring meeting in Nottingham was postponed, and the May meeting again at the IOP was the George Alcott Memorial Lecture was postponed. With the introduction of the national lockdown banning all but essential travel, the decision was taken by the boards to open up the recordings of our previous meetings to everyone. And a decision was taken to launch a weekly webinar using Zoom software. Now, this was done on a weekly basis every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and hopefully that sort of people were able to set their put that in their diary and be aware that was going to be coming up. So we held 7 in April, 4 in May, 4 in June, 6 in July. The first one was done more or less at the start of lockdown, kicked off by Nick James looking at the launch of comets on the first, sorry, on the prospect for comets on the 1st of April, which was excellent. And we also, due to the success for that, we had these were very successful and received positive comment, even to the extent in the astronomical press and astronomy now as well, which was pleased. And once again, I have to thank Andy Wilson, who contributed so much to these particularly difficult times, the death of his dad. He's again acting as administrator for this evening. In conjunction with Hazel Collett, we also partly reinstated the normal BAA meetings in the form of special webinars, as we had the presenters sort of arranged. We wanted to bring those to your screens if at all possible. And we hope that you've enjoyed these events. And whilst we've reduced their frequency slightly moving forward, we would welcome any suggestions for topics, and dare I say, any offers to give a presentation as well. A return to face-to-face meetings. Whilst we were hopeful a few months ago that this might be possible in the new year, the current situation does appear to make that less likely. The IOP is not looking to reopen their building in King's Cross in the foreseeable future, and January meeting will definitely take place by webinar. Likely that the March one and subsequent will follow as well, I'm afraid. It's something that particularly we have to be aware of our volunteers who support us. And we do have a larger demographic of people who are sort of larger or increased years, as it were, and so we have to be appreciative that not many of them will not want to be travelling and in a meeting situation. The awards. The association has a series of awards which are not awarded every year, but they are awarded over a period of time. And these have been left by beneficiaries and retain the name of the beneficiary who started the awards. The senior award is the Water Goodacre Award. It's in recognition of the recipient's contribution to astronomy over many years. In recent years, there have been a lack of nominations for this award, but there again, like London Buses, that we had 2 exceptionally good nominations this year, and there was a debate held within council to look at this, and there had been a precedent, and Richard McKim advised us accordingly, that back in, I think it was 1979, when 2 of the awards were made during the same year, and a decision was made to award this to both of the nominees. And so it is with great pleasure that announce that the awards for the Water Goodacre medal went to both Professor Bill Leatherbarrow and Gary Poyner, and there's their pictures off their individual members' website pages. So we do have, at the moment, we would normally present those in face-to-face and shake hands and give them the medals at a face-to-face meeting. Sadly, that is not possible, so we're trying to arrange something that how we can distribute those medals and in accordance with how Bill and Gary would like. So congratulations to them. The Steavenson Award is for outstanding contribution to observational astronomy, and it gives me great pleasure that in a year for women in astronomy for 2020 to announce that the award was made to Alexandra Hart. Now, Alexandra hasn't got a members page, and so I don't have a picture at the present time, but congratulations to her. She was nominated by Secretary Director Lynn Smith for observational work in the solar section, and she does an incredibly good job, and she's, in actual fact, she has got a preliminary approved article which will be shortly be appearing in a future journal, hopefully in February time. So congratulations to Alexandra, a very worthy winner in that. The Merlin Medal is in recognition of a notable contribution to the advancement of astronomy. And this year, the award went to Roger Pickard. Roger will be known to very many of you, section director of the Variable Stars section for 20 years, but in receipt of the Merlin Medal and gift for this year. So very well indeed to Roger. What I would also like to make a mention of, if I may, is that within the awards and the funds that we have, there are another couple of funds. The Merton Fund is one which is perhaps not very well known, and I wanted, bearing in mind that sort of the potential that some members may be having financial problems at the present time, that there is this fund that can be used to assist with applications to the Treasurer via the office. If people are struggling to meet subscriptions, then an application can be made via the office to the Treasurer to receive some benefit and reduction in subscription from the Merton Fund. So that's just thought I'd like to mention that. We also have the Ridley Grant, and this is again to members who there is the opportunity for members to apply to council for a grant of up to £1,000 to purchase equipment in connection with a specific observational programme. And I was pleased to announce that the Ridley Grant was awarded in record time, so I believe earlier this year, and was given to Martin Lewis. Martin was doing an observational project on observing the dark side of Venus during the earlier opposition in the beginning of the year, to pick up the lights. So it's in the narrow band of infrared, and the grant was made to enable him to purchase a narrowband filter and an appropriate camera, which had been recommended by other members of the BAA who had been undertaking this work out in Australia. So very well done to Martin. The Sir Patrick Moore Prize is normally awarded at the Christmas meeting, and so last Christmas the IOP, Dr. Stephen Barrett, was awarded the prize last year. We did at council vote for the winner of the prize this year, but obviously that was only decided this afternoon, and I wouldn't, people haven't, both the successful applicant or the nominee and also the unsuccessful ones have not yet been informed, so we will do that at a later meeting, but that is awarded every year, and obviously in memory of Sir Patrick. The website. The association's website is one of the main faces of the association to the outside world, and for many members who are unable to attend meetings regularly, is one of the chief ways of interacting with the association. Our objective is that the website should be a way of fostering a greater sense of community amongst members, and this during the period of lockdown I hope has proved to be the case in recent months. The contents of the website are actively managed by the website ops team or operations team led by Callum Potter, assisted by Andy Wilson, John Shooter, Stuart Moore, Elliot Hall, and of course Dominic Ford, who tends to do the serious work on the structure of the website. David Swan stepped down during the session. Their aim is to increase the frequency of news articles published online, as well as observers' challenges and tutorials. And members are also encouraged, as I mentioned before, to upload their observations to their own members page and contribute to the live forum. Over the next 12 months, we will be will be undertaken to migrate the website onto a new operating system, and the board have approved initial work in this connection to try and get that improved. Web content editor, that following several very generous bequests to the association, as Jeff pointed out earlier on this evening, the association is now holding significant reserves, and the board took the decision to take that some of these funds should be spent to enhance the services provided to the membership and the wider public as a charity. To this end, a section directors workshop was held last November with the objective of identifying improvements should be made. One of the key outcomes initially from that meeting was that some of the section directors felt that they needed assistance to enhance the website, and on that basis the board agreed to the funding for a web content editor. I'm pleased to confirm that following receipt of over 100 applications, an appointment was made, and Aidan Ashford, known to many people from his work with Astronomy Now, started work for the association at the beginning of August. Outside events, the association again took a stand up at the International Astronomy Show last November, and again at Astrofest in January. Thanks to those volunteers who help set up and attend the stand for these events. It wouldn't happen without your support. I'd particularly like to call out Anne Davis for her work in connection with the BAA shop, and for the various people who help her and stand in on occasions, particularly a long way away, and to ferry the merchandise around the countryside. Sadly, with the restrictions of COVID, the Practical Astronomy Show and New Scientist Live have had to be deferred until next year. Whilst mentioning Anne Davis, I also wanted to mention the Winchester Weekend. This has obviously been going on for many years, and thanks to Anne for arranging all the speakers and the event. This is an event which is well loved, and an opportunity to meet up with other members, and was another casualty of the pandemic. Even as we speak, it looks likely that unlikely that this can return to being face-to-face in 2021. And those of you who have attended Sparshot College and been crammed into the little room that is used as the auditorium, that can probably appreciate why. So Anne has put together is putting together a virtual event which will feature the Astronomy Now, the Alfred Curtis Memorial Lecture, and will hopefully, I believe, Pete Lawrence and Paul Abel from the Sky at Night have hopefully agreed to do their presentation that they've done at Winchester for the last few years. So that's details of that are going to be in the journal for December. The sections. These are the backbone of the association. So I would like to personally say a sincere thanks to all our section directors and their supporting teams that work so hard on behalf of the BAA. Without them, we would not have the association that we do. So what I've done is I've tried to pick a few of items from members' websites just to give an example, and hopefully I haven't. Hopefully Nick James won't be cussing in sort of quietly under his muted thing that I've taken examples that he's subsequently used in the Sky Nights. Apologies if I have. But what I wanted to do here, we've this one taken back in March by Martin Mobley. This is taken from a remote observation site in New Mexico, half-meter plane wave telescope. Wonderful image showing the comet C 2019 Y4. I haven't got it written down. Is that Atlas? I can't remember, sorry. But just to show that is from a remote site and a very big telescope. By way of contrast, I picked this one, which is one by Peter Edwards from July of Comet Neowise 2020 F3. And this is taken with a DSLR Nikon 5200, 85mm lens. Yes, an equatorial driven mount, but with 1600 stack of, sorry, that's ISO 1600 stack of 25, 30-second exposures. So that just really shows the level of expertise and to get quality from both using a remote telescope in New Mexico with a half-meter telescope to using an 85mm DSLR lens. So there is plenty for everybody. The next one I came across to highlight was one from Mark Radici down from Salisbury, and this is the apparition of Venus, which we were particularly lucky at the start of lockdown that we seem to have without so many contrails, that we seem to have some excellent weather. And this was a superb compilation of the showing the angular size increasing and the phase diminishing of Venus. Wonderful. And then I've also chosen, this is the drawing by Paul Abel later on in the Venus one back in August, using a Newtonian reflector, but showing a visual and how the difference of drawing and showing how the different filters pick up the different markings on the surface. Here again, another example of a wonderfully good sort of observation. Tim Hames, back in shortly before the opposition of Mars, we've had some superb pictures coming in, and I know that Richard's been very pleased with the number of observations that he's received as section director. I think even more pleased that we haven't had dust storms obscuring the surface, and so the results have been amazing. This one taken by Tim, Celestion C11, with 3,000 frames at 30 frames per second, just shows what can be done, and it counteracts the effect of the distortion of the atmosphere by using those frames. I know that Lynn, as section director for the solar section, has had a quiet time with sunspots, but people are still observing prominences, and I chose this one of a huge prominence observed by David Strange back very recently, in actual fact, in October, from the Norman Lockyer Observatory down in Devon, using a solar scope. Wonderful picture. And last of these, if I may, was just to be looking at the night sky by Alan Tuff. Was a wonderful aurora display, again with a DSLR and long exposure, almost at the opposite end of the spectrum to the short ones for the previous for Mars. I'd like to also mention the members pages, that you can click on them, you can sort them alphabetically, and I would like to take the opportunity to ask members to we've got some wonderful members within the association that have some very good pictures. Particularly, I would like to encourage our female members to have their sites. We've got some wonderful observers. They are doing some fantastic work in astronomy. They are sadly underrepresented in our members pages, so we would like to encourage people to do that. We've got non-members as well, that's on YouTube, who are females who are doing wonderful things as far as astronomy, and would like to reflect that better within the BAA. Finally, I would like to just make a call out for the Commission for Dark Skies. That there are many people who don't really know that the CFDS is really part of the BAA, that we help fund it. But hopefully that many of you will have been aware that an all-party parliamentary dark sky group was set up recently. And there was a request for organisations and individuals to submit their suggestions in September, which was highlighted in one of the newsletters. I'm pleased to confirm that the final draft of the policy recommendations that the APPG will make to the government has been issued, and the Commission for Dark Skies was thanked with the comment that your expertise has been invaluable in putting this together, and that the document, the 10 Dark Skies policies for the government, will hopefully be published very soon. Let us hope that the government has the time and the inclination to act on some of the recommendations. So thank you very much indeed for listening. And can I pass you back to Andy, who will then also pass you over to Bill for the results of the ballot of the board and the council. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Alan. And I'll just give a little call out to Stuart Morris, who's also a member of the website operations team, who joined the team this year and does a huge amount in the background and has done for a good many years quietly behind the scenes.
Apologies.
And over to Bill.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Wonderful acoustics in the kitchen. I'd like to now announce the results of the elections, the result of which was the ballot closed on the 12th of October, and the count was held a week later. Can you see the screen?
We're not seeing anything, Bill. Are
Oh,
you?
dear me.
Should you be sharing something at the moment?
Yes, I should.
If you want to try, the share button should be in the middle bottom of the screen.
Can you see that?
I'm not seeing anything. I have a copy, so if you want, I will share my copy and then you can speak.
Can't see why it's not working, but no technology for you. Okay, could you?
Oh, and I think you're breaking up a little bit there, Bill. I'm just putting them online. Hopefully you can now see. Bill?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm now sharing. So if you'd like to talk through them, the first slide is on the screen.
Votes were Alan Lorraine, President 560. Alan Potter is of course XEO. Jeff was Treasurer 545. Bill Tarver, Business Secretary 53. Jeremy Shears, Paper Secretary 549. And Hazel Collett, Meeting Secretary 539. On to the trustees. Janice McLean 422. John Shooter 355. Nick Hewitt 326. Petter Bosley 313. And Tim Parsons 287. They are elected trustees. Steve Bosley's votes of 283 go to count as votes for council. On to the council. David Boyd 469. Marie-Louise Archer 468. Steve Bosley 464. Elliot Hull 405. Nick Hewitt 189. Tim Parsons 181 and Petter Bosley 167. So the top four are voted onto council, and the last three are on council by virtue of the fact they are trustees. Total votes cast were 457 on digital, on paper 154, so the total is 611. Blank votes 4, invalid 12, of which 11 were duplicates. And for duplicates, a paper ballot is discounted. And my thanks go to the scrutineers, Maddie Davey and Julia Palmer, and thanks to Andy for supervising the voting.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
And I'll just jump in and add as well that we're going to overrun a bit today as we're almost at 8 o'clock. And Nick's just let me know the Sky Notes will last about 25 minutes. So we'll probably go on to close to 8:30. And we have Nick online. So it'll be my great pleasure to introduce Nick James to give the Sky Notes.
Thank you, Andy. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just turned off my microphone.
Okay. Right. Let's see where we go. So yeah, it's going to take about 25 minutes, Sky Notes. So the meeting's going to overrun a tad. Let's see if I go full screen. Come on. Is that full screen now, Andy?
Yes, that's all looking good, all full screen.
Good. Okay, so we'll start with Sky Notes, and I always like to start Sky Notes with a pretty picture, and usually the pretty picture is from a fairly small selection of people who live up in the north of Scotland. This one I really like. This is a picture of a recent aurora from the end of September by Gordon Mackey at Brewster in Caithness up on the north coast of Scotland. Just a really nicely composed picture there, and even got a meteor in the top right hand corner. So I also traditionally tend to start Sky Notes by showing a picture of a blank sun, but given that we now have spots of the new cycle appearing, I can't do that now. So this is the sun this morning. There's quite a nice sunspot visible, AR 2778. So worth getting the telescope out and having a look if you haven't had a look at the sun recently. And we've had some nice images submitted to the BAA. So this one of a previous group from earlier in October by David Strange, taken with a solar scope, 70mm. And then Alan, in his review of the year, actually used quite a lot of the photos I'm doing in Sky Notes. So there will be a bit of repetition. But here's that prominence from October the 22nd, so a few days ago. An image by Ron Johnson and an image by David Strange. So the sun is definitely beginning to get more active now. Definitely worth going out and observing it if you can. And of course, an active sun potentially means more aurorae, and there's a few more nice, pretty pictures of aurorae here. This one by Alan Tooth, taken in end of September in bright moonlight, which gives a really nice effect of illuminating the foreground with the aurora in the background. And then right up to date, this is an image by Dennis Pachynski, taken from Tarbert Ness, up on the Tarbert Peninsula between the Moray and Dornoch Firths. Where he has really, really nice dark skies when it's clear. And here's a really nice example of a low-level aurora to his north with the Plough as a major right in the middle of the field there. So if we just start looking at what's in the sky at the moment, start in the evening, so around about 6 p.m. And of course, we're now back on UT. So UT, we don't need to do any calculations to remove hours from time. 6 p.m. is 6 p.m. local and 6 p.m. UT. And of course, the two planets that have been around throughout the summer, although rather low in Sagittarius, are Jupiter and Saturn. And they're still there, but they're beginning to disappear off into the southwest now. So we've had the best of those two planets, and people have had some very good views of them from the UK, even though they've been very low down in the south. The moon, of course, these are the phases of the moon. We're currently coming up to Halloween, October the 31st, which is full moon, which is very appropriate. And then the next new moon is November the 15th, which is when those of us who like nice dark skies will have our chance to do observing. I'll mention a little bit later one of the I was going to say issues, but issues is a word I try and avoid using. One of the problems I have with astronomical imaging is that people use different orientations. So a lot of planetary images tend to put south at the top, whereas others put north at the top, and that makes comparing images quite difficult. And I thought initially that this picture of the moon was inverted, and the inversion comes from using a telescope. But actually, this is how the moon would appear to the observer. This is a picture by Maurice Collins in New Zealand. And any of you who've been to the Southern Hemisphere will know that the moon appears upside down there. Of course, the moon isn't upside down, you are. And I do wonder how people who believe in flat Earths can actually cope with this. They do have some theories that explain it. And I can remember going to a lecture last year from somebody who was talking about flat Earths, and apparently there's an international society of flat Earth believers, and they all flew around the world to meet together at some point. Anyway, so this is the moon upside down, showing a lot of craters along the terminator, Mare Serenitatis and Tranquillitatis there in the center. A little bit earlier this month, there was a really nice conjunction of the Moon and Jupiter and Saturn, low in the south west. And this picture here by Janice McLean shows that. You've actually got, you can see here, if you've got a reasonably big screen, you've got the moons of Jupiter there. Here's Saturn up the top and the Moon down the bottom. And that was a very nice conjunction indeed. And they're the kinds of things that get public interested. I had quite a lot of people the next day in work asking me what the two bright stars above the Moon were. So it gives you a chance to explain things. So the Moon, we tend to think of the Moon as a place where not a lot happens. The appearance of features changes a lot depending on the lighting, but we don't actually sort of see much happening. But these are some examples where we do see things happening. These are some videos by Luigi Moroni taken with a fast optical system, a C14 Hyperstar, at f1.9, taken at a high frame rate, showing what we think are possibly lunar impacts. So you can see them here. They're not just flashes, so they don't appear on just one frame. They appear over multiple frames. So there's one here, and then you'll see another one appearing over here. And this is a really interesting project to do when the Moon's around, and usually in a crescent phase where you can actually see the Earth-lit hemisphere and image it. A really interesting thing to do, and some really good science can come from this. At the moment, I don't think we have confirmations from any other observers that these were actually really impacts, but they certainly look very much as if they are. Something very worthwhile doing, and if you're interested, I believe Tony Cook in the lunar section is coordinating that program for them. So, as I mentioned, Saturn and Jupiter are disappearing quite quickly now into the southwest. Here's one of Damien's images of Saturn. This was actually taken from La Palma using a fairly large telescope on La Palma. I think Damien actually went out there to show somebody how to do planetary image processing, and he actually had the opportunity to get some really good images. So this is Saturn from La Palma. And this is Saturn from Leicester, I guess. This is Paul Abel's drawing of Saturn. Again, I'm always confused by orientations here. So I think Damien normally puts north up, east left. And I think Paul puts south up, east right. But in this case, it looks to be mirror imaged as well. But I'm not sure about that. Paul can shout at me later on about that. Of course, the planet that's really in the news at the moment is Mars. It's just past opposition. It's been very bright. Lots of people have been mentioning to me, what's that really bright red star in the sky? And having the opportunity to explain that it's Mars, and actually showing a few people Mars through a telescope when they've kind of wandered by at a reasonable social distance to have a look through. And we've had some fantastic images submitted of Mars. These are two examples from late September, one by Martin Lewis on the left and one by Ian Sharp on the right. They're 1 day apart. And one of the things about Mars is it rotates on its axis in almost the same period, slightly longer than the Earth takes to rotate on its axis. So if you observe it at the same time each night, you get to see pretty much the same hemisphere. And this is the hemisphere which includes zero longitude on Mars. Meridiani Sinum is this feature here. So this is effectively Mars's meridian. This is the side which probably is not as familiar to people as this side. So this is the archetypal image of Mars. This is some images by David Arditi showing Syrtis Major here. And by the way, I've inverted all of these images so that north is at the top, so we can actually compare them, which is why the writing's upside down. You've got Syrtis Major here, and you've got the Hellas Basin here, and you've got these features, cloud features on each of the limbs. You've got, this is the South Pole, this is the South Polar Cap, and this is the North Pole. So this is cloud features over the North Pole of Mars. But you can see the Syrtis Major very clearly. And when I've had a look at Mars, and I'm not a visual observer at all, but when I look at Mars, when the Syrtis Major is visible, it really does look like Mars. It's the thing that pretty much everyone can recognize on the planet. This is an image by Damien Peach taken, so that the image by David Arditi here is taken with a C14, which is a big enough telescope, but this is taken by Damien Peach with a 1 meter telescope in Chile called Chiliscope. And again, it's the same hemisphere. So you've got Syrtis Major here and you've got the Hellas Basin here. So Damien is doing quite a lot of imaging with this 1 meter telescope, and he sent through an image which is absolutely astonishing, which is this next one. This is taken on a night of really good seeing with a 1 meter telescope in Chile, and just shows extraordinary detail. This feature here is the Elysium volcano, and these features over here are towards Olympus Mons, the volcanoes on the other limb of Mars. And you can see the very small residual southern polar cap there. Just quite remarkable images, but that's what you get using a 1 meter telescope in Chile, and also with the amazing image processing skills that Damien has. He really does set the standard for everyone to follow, I think. Just a couple of notes about other planets. We've got Uranus coming up to opposition again on Halloween, October the 31st. And Neptune is now past opposition, but still visible. But both, of course, are very small planets, difficult to see features on. But Uranus is currently the subject of a BAA Observers Challenge, so definitely worth trying to follow that up. If you can, just have a look on the website at the Observers Challenge and see what you need to do. If we go around then into the morning sky, the planet that's visible there and dominating the morning sky is the planet Venus. It's low down in the east as the sky begins to lighten for dawn. And the big news there, of course, which Alan has already mentioned, is the discovery of phosphine in the atmosphere of Venus, and potentially the fact that that is a marker of life. It would be an extraordinary thing if we found life on Venus. It's the most unlikely place you can think of to support life, really. But this journal cover, I think, is brilliant. It's a David Hardy painting, original done, modified for us by the artist, which I think is fantastic and really good, showing the absorption line there of phosphine, and then having Paul inside the journal writing up some details on that discovery. So again, I'd like to say, to Philip, the editor of the journal, just how good that journal was, and how impressive it is now that we can get such up-to-date news in our journal. I remember when it took many months, when printing technology was not as fast as it is now, to get things in there. Here are just some images of Venus. Venus is now receding away from us, getting quite small. Some gibbous phase images by Peter Tickner, and a drawing there again by Paul, showing some features in the clouds, but very, very difficult object to observe now. It's getting very, very small, and it doesn't show many features at the best of times. And here's some rather nice images, again by Luigi Moroni, the guy who did the lunar impact videos from just about a week or so ago, in different wavelengths, showing features in the Venusian clouds. And of course, we just had a spacecraft fly past Venus. That's the ESA Bepi-Colombo spacecraft. It's intending to go to Mercury, and it's not gone to the wrong planet by mistake. It uses a fly past of Venus to actually adjust its orbit, and it's got two of them. The first one, which took place on the 15th of October this year, actually had quite a large miss distance. The second one, which takes place next August, so in August 2021, actually flies, I think, within something like 600 kilometers of the surface of Venus. So very, very precise targeting needed there to ensure you don't drive the spacecraft into the planet. After that flyby, it then starts its flybys of Mercury. So very quickly after the 2021 August flyby of Venus, it's going to do a Mercury flyby in October next year. So that will be really interesting. The ISS is around if you get up early in the morning at the moment to see Venus. If you get up a little bit earlier, there are some quite good passes of the ISS, overhead bright passes of the ISS, and the ISS is an extremely bright object at the moment because it's such a large object, and when the lighting's right, it can be almost as bright as Venus when it goes overhead. Of course, we're now coming into winter months, and we see all of the standard winter constellations, and of those, Orion is probably the most recognizable of the constellations. It's visible now in the late evening, and by kind of early morning, it's high up crossing the meridian. And there's lots and lots of interesting things in Orion, many of which we're very familiar with. But it's often nice to see familiar objects rendered in a different way. And I was really taken by this stunning image of M42, taken by Nick Shimanek. Again, an example of somebody using a really impressive telescope. This is a CDK-24 in Chile, so in very, very good conditions, but also showing the incredible skill of the person who's actually doing the processing. Anyone who's taken images of M42 knows that it's very, very easy to saturate the inner area around the trapezium so that you lose detail here. And Nick has been very careful here to make sure he doesn't do that and just process this in a way that brings out all of the detail here without looking kind of artificial or forced, but without saturating any of the key areas as well. So I was really impressed by that image, but I wouldn't want people to get disheartened to think that you need to go to Chile to take amazing deep sky images, because I was also incredibly impressed by this image. This image is taken by Callum Scott Wingrove of IC 1848 in Cassiopeia. It's a narrowband image. It's taken with hydrogen alpha O3 and S2 filters. But Callum lives basically at the end of the Jubilee line in Stanmore in London. So anybody who knows northeast London knows that that's not an ideal place to be observing the sky from. And I just think it's extraordinary that with the right kind of equipment and filters, but also with skill and care in processing, that you can achieve things like this, even from possibly, you know, some of the worst light polluted environments in the country. So we should never give up fighting light pollution, but you should never also just give up because you live in a place where there is light pollution. You can always do astronomy. And here's another really good example. This is from Mazin Yunus, again off the BAA members page. Mazin lives in Hale Barnes in Manchester, which is not far from Altrincham, south of Manchester. I think it's within about 2 or 3 miles of Manchester Airport. And he's managed to obtain an image like this of the Bubble Nebula NGC 7635 using a 8-inch telescope and an ASI 294 Pro camera. So the kind of cameras that we have available now are really good and help us to do this. So even if you do live in challenging, difficult environments, it's definitely worth going out on those clear nights and doing astronomy. Just a few things. So most deep sky objects don't change very much. The things that do change generally in deep sky objects is when they have a supernova go off. And this is a bright supernova that's appeared recently in, I can't remember which NGC. Oh, it's NGC 514. This is an image again by Peter Tickner showing the supernova there, and Robin Ledbetter managed to get a spectrum of it. And this is another great thing that amateurs can do now, is getting spectra of relatively faint objects. It's about Mag 14, the supernova. I imaged it the other night. And what Robin there has done is overlaid the spectrum of a prototype Type 1a supernova, SN 2006AX, and you can see how well it matches the spectrum of this new supernova 2020 UXZ. So amateurs are doing a really good job now in classification of supernovae. So I mentioned in terms of the deep sky being fairly static, and we see supernovae in external galaxies, but we don't see much else changing. That's not entirely true. There are a few nebulae which we call variable nebulae, which we can actually see change over short timescales. And this is an example of one of those. This is a nebula called Gilbert-Dagians Nebula. It's in Cepheus. It has a star which is responsible for illuminating the nebula, which is called PV Cephei. It's a variable star. And as you can see from this pair of images here, one taken in July 2018, the other in September 2020, this star has changed in magnitude substantially, and the nebulosity has almost disappeared. So the second image here was taken in the middle of September, when there was still some residual nebulosity, but we've just been through a period where PV-CFI has gone down very faint to fainter than 19th magnitude, and this nebula has disappeared entirely, but it looks like it may be coming back now. So this is a pair of images by Mike Harlow showing the situation in middle of July and in October. And you can see in the October image, this is PV-CFI here. It's faded substantially, and the nebulosity is pretty much completely gone. There's some nebulosity south, which we can always see, which doesn't vary much. And there's another bit of nebulosity here to the north. But the actual main part of the variable nebula is gone. And all you can see is this background molecular cloud, which is surrounding the object. It does look as though the nebula might be coming back now. This rather jerky GIF is from some of my images recently, and if you look here, it's not very obvious, but there is something that looks like it's coming back towards the middle to the end of October. That's much better shown on this recent image by Mike. This is a deep image showing here that the nebulosity is returning. So Nick Hewitt, who was worried that he'd lost yet another variable nebula after the one in Orion, McNeil's nebula, had disappeared, can probably be assured that this one is coming back. But it's definitely a nebula worth keeping an eye on, observing this one. Other variable things which are much more normal for the VSS are variable stars, and I've got 3 here to talk about. The first one is Betelgeuse, which everyone can find in the left shoulder of Orion. Towards the end of last year, Betelgeuse had faded down to about the faintest that we'd seen it for a long time, about mag 1.7 or so. It then started brightening, but then we lost it in the solar glare through the summer. But it is reappearing now, and it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. This is a light curve from the VSS database. It looks like it's kind of risen and is stabilizing. So keep an eye on Betelgeuse every night, do an estimate, and let's see what happens to it over the next few months when we've got good visibility of Orion. There's 2 other variable stars I want to mention. One of them, so these are much fainter than Betelgeuse, much more difficult to find, but they're both cataclysmic type variables. This one is a variable called IX Draconis, so it's in Draco. This variable is a really interesting object. It's been studied in great detail by the NASA TESS spacecraft. So this is an exoplanet survey spacecraft, but as a byproduct, it's actually giving really good data on variable stars. And you can see that at quiescence, this star is bouncing around all over the place. These peaks are every few days or so. Apparently the TESS spacecraft won't be able to observe the star for a while, so there's a call out for BAA observers to observe it. And a few of us have been actually observing it over the last few weeks, and here's a light curve showing that. We expect that the next super outburst, so when the star brightens considerably, will be around November the 14th, which conveniently lines up with the next new moon. So that's good, and definitely something to keep an eye on if you can get down with your imaging systems to around 16th, 17th magnitude. Unfiltered is fine. This doesn't need a filter. You can do it just with a normal CCD camera. The third variable is this one, a variable called AY Lacerta. And this is an interesting variable because it's currently an outburst, but it's only had 2 previous outbursts. Jeremy has just sent me a message saying he had IX draw at mag 16.4 2 hours ago. So yes, it was at one. I think it's currently at one of these peaks, and it's just fading down from the peak. AY Lacerta is a star that hasn't been seen in outbursts very often. It's been seen in 1927 and 1966, and it's now in outburst again, but it's fading down from that outburst, as you can see in this light curve. These are from BAA observations. However, it could re-brighten again. So again, it's another object to keep under observation if you can. All of these are conveniently placed in the sky for us at the moment. So in terms of the smaller bodies of the solar system, this is an amazing thing that's happened recently. This is asteroid Bennu, which is a tiny asteroid, about 490 meters across. And the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, the American OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, has actually touched the surface of Bennu and picked up some material. It has now managed to stow that material, and it's on its way back to Earth, and it'll bring it back to Earth in 3 years' time or so. Just another amazing thing. I'm always amazed by the incredible images and the incredible skill that goes into making these missions work. The care that was involved in actually getting this sample mission down on the surface without bumping into boulders and other things. So that looks very good. That's a mission that's that looks like it's going to hopefully bring back some material from this asteroid. There's another asteroid as well that you could observe tonight if you get a clear sky and you have a suitable telescope. This is actually an object that's currently on the Near Earth Object Confirmation page. And normally asteroids that are on the NEOCP are quite small and faint, but this asteroid is big. It's probably over 100 meters in diameter. Last night when I took this movie, it was only a little bit over 1 million kilometers away. It was moving at about 55 arc seconds an hour. Tonight, it will have faded a bit to about magnitude 16, but it's moving much more slowly. It's moving at about 20 arc seconds a minute. It's pretty well placed at the moment in the evening sky. So at the moment, it's in the southeast, about 33 degrees above the horizon. If you have got a clear sky, it might be worth going out and having a look for it. You can get an ephemeris of the Minor Planet Center NEOCP page for your location. It may even at 16th magnitude be something you could actually see visually in a largest telescope, but it should be something you can image reasonably easily. It seems to be varying in brightness quite rapidly. So again, another interesting object to have a look at, and quite unusual. It's quite rare that we discover such large objects moving close to the Earth. Usually most of the things that are discovered are in the kind of 10 to 50 meter range, and this is 100 or maybe 150 meters across. Luckily, no prospect of it actually hitting the Earth. Smaller objects that did hit the Earth. This is an interesting object from back in September, 22nd of September. This is an Earth grazing fireball. The video on the left is from one of the cameras that Peter Carson operates in Leigh-on-Sea, not far from Southend in Essex. And the picture on the right is from Jim Rowe's camera system in East Barnet in North London. And we now have really good coverage over the UK, looking at the sky all the time, looking for these objects. So it's possible to work out their orbits quite precisely from this information. And this object was a really interesting one. It was an Earth grazer. It actually started some way to the east of Bremen in Germany, and it covered a track of about 1,000 kilometers long, disappearing somewhere above the Bristol Channel as it went into southwest England. It was an Earth grazer, so essentially it reached its point of closest approach just north of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and then it started rising again, and it left the Earth's atmosphere somewhere out to the west of England. And there are various groups that are involved in these analyses who run camera systems, all with lots of interesting acronyms. So Nematode, UKMON, and GMN. And all of them produce data. Jim Rowe is working with others to actually get the systems to be able to use this data together. So they can actually analyze the data together. And this is an analysis by Dennis Vida of that particular object, showing it decelerating as it moved through our atmosphere and then left to go out into space again. So a really interesting object. Another bright fireball recently. This is only a couple of days ago, in the morning of October the 25th. John Savage posted his all sky picture on the left here on the BAA webpage. This is from the Frippon network that Jim Rowe is involved in, which is looking to identify fireballs that might drop meteorites, so that we might be able to recover meteorites from fireball events. And Derek Robson managed to get this in Loughborough, where he got the start of it with a nice spectrum. So again, we have the trajectory data, we've got a spectrum which will allow us to work out what it's made from, and one day hopefully we'll actually be able to recover a fall from one of these things. So coming up to the end now, I can't finish, of course, without mentioning comets, but I've already said a lot about this one. This was the amazing comet we had in the summer, 2020 F3 Neowise, and this is a gorgeous picture by Adam Jeffers from Baymore in Northern Ireland, just showing the comet above a circle of standing stones there. And we were extremely lucky. 2020 has been a year to forget for lots of reasons, for COVID and other things, but we were just very lucky having that comet in the summer. I just feel that it kind of made the summer for me. It was an extraordinary object to see in the sky, and some lovely pictures we got. Unfortunately, we don't really have much in the cometary sky to look at the moment. There are two relatively, I say relatively, bright comets. They're both about 9th, 10th magnitude or so. They're relatively far south. So this one, 2020 M3 Atlas. This is an image by Martin Mobley of that comet, and this is an image that Peter Carson took the other day from his observatory in Spain. Peter's telescopes moved from Leon C in Essex down to Spain to get better conditions, and it's taken Peter quite a while to get it all working, but it's now working extremely well and producing some extremely good results. The other one that's about the same magnitude is 2020 S3 Erasmus. Again, it's moving south. It's about -7 Dec, I think, at the moment. But they are both visible visually in larger telescopes. I've had reports of people observing them in larger telescopes. Andrew Robertson sent me some reports of these that he's observed in his large telescopes from Norfolk. So they are observable, but they're not spectacular in the way that Neowise was, and we don't have anything particularly on, scheduled to come along for a while. Or at all for bright comets. But as we know with Neowise, that was spectacular only a few months after it was discovered. So comets can always surprise us. There is one comet, though, that's also capable of surprising us a bit at the moment and is worth observing, and that's this one. So people often think, if there was a pub quiz and somebody asked you what was the largest comet in the solar system, you might say Hale-Bopp, which had a nucleus of maybe 50 kilometers across, something like that. This is probably the largest comet that we observe regularly, and this is Comet Schwarzmann-Wachmann, Comet 29P. It has a nucleus diameter of something like 60 kilometers, but it's a long way out. It orbits around about the orbit of Jupiter, so it takes a long time to go around. But this comet outbursts quite regularly, and Richard Miles is running a program within the comet section to watch this comet. And we now have lots of observers observing this comet regularly. And here's a light curve that Richard sent me today of the observations for the latter half of this year, showing clearly various outbursts. There was a big one on July 26, and then fairly regular ones thereafter. And one of the things that Richard has actually inferred from these outbursts is that some of the weaker ones don't eject material with enough velocity that it can actually escape the nucleus, because even though the nucleus is small, it has some gravitational pull, and so some of the material falls back onto the nucleus and then provokes further activity. So this is a really interesting program, a really good program to get involved with. If you have the capability to image this comet every night, then we would certainly appreciate your observations. There's a standardized way of measuring brightness, which is, if you have a look on the Comet Section website, and have a look in the Comet Section Observing Guide, Richard has written a section in the guide that explains how to do that. So something very worthwhile to do. Then I'm just going to wrap up with something which I suspect very few of us are going to see this year. So there is a total eclipse expected, well, not expected, due on the 14th of December 2020. It's visible from South America. it's not that far away from the total eclipse that a lot of us saw, which is the one shown at the bottom right there, in the summer of 2019. The difference being that the 2019 eclipse was very low down near to the horizon. The 2020 eclipse will be almost overhead. However, there is a small issue associated with traveling to South America at the moment. And that probably means that very few people are going to get to see this eclipse. So it's a very strange situation. And I know COVID has caused many more problems for many more people than this, but this is another one. This is a problem with, if you want to go and see a total eclipse, it's not going to delay itself just because we can't travel there. So if anyone does get to see this eclipse, I'm sure we'd be really pleased to receive any pictures you can take. Obviously, people who are living in Argentina and Chile will be able to observe it. And I think a few enterprising people might get down there as well to see it, but we really have to wait and see how this one's going to work out. Then finally, just a reminder, National Astronomy Week 2020 coming up 14th to 22nd of November. Again, it's a very unusual National Astronomy Week because of all the COVID restrictions, so it's going to be a virtual National Astronomy Week. But one of the key things will be webcasts, several of which are being hosted by BAA observers, to allow you to do live viewing of the sky in a virtual environment. So essentially watching videos from other people's telescopes. So something to look out for in November. Let's hope we get some clear skies, lots of interesting things coming up to see, and lots of interesting things in the sky. We just need to hope for some good weather, and they'll get reported at our next Sky Notes, which will be at the Christmas meeting, which I think is December the 6th, something like that, yet another virtual meeting. So thank you very much for listening. Sorry we've gone on a bit longer than expected, but hopefully you found that interesting.
Thank you very much, Nick. It was fascinating Sky Notes again. I think, Alan, did you want to say a few words?
No, thanks so much indeed to Nick for that, and glad I didn't take too many of your pictures, but they were an AGM with a difference, but I hope that people have enjoyed the talks, and we move on. So thank you for logging in, as it were.
Yes, and thanks once again to all the speakers. We're back with a webinar in 2 weeks on Wednesday, the 11th of November at 7 p.m, when we'll be hearing about video meteor detection and spectroscopy by Alex Pratt, William Stewart, and Bill Ward. So we hope to see many of you then. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.